Dude, why do I keep opening Google Chrome when I mean to open Safari?
Do you want to be in the video? You want to be in the video? Okay, you look really uncomfortable. Okay, let's see if Angela wants.
Okay, so these are Blaire White's thoughts about Trump and the trans community, which is like, I can already tell this is going to be a disaster. She's gotten my hopes up before with like thumbnails and titles, but like this is like, I already know it's going to be bad. Like when she attacked, not attacked, when she made me think she was going to attack J.K. Rowling, it was just a video of her fucking capitulating to turfism. Like,
oh, now she's mad. Bella, stop! Jeez, leave
stop trying to distract me with your pets.
alone. Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. Hope everyone's staying safe out there. So today's video is on a topic that you guys ask me to discuss all the time, and I've definitely...
Blaire is like a self-hating trans woman who thinks that anyone who passes less than her isn't a real trans, basically. Yeah, that's a pretty good way of like concisely breaking down the transphobia of Blaire White.
Dragged my feet a little bit in doing it, not because I've been pessimistic about politics. I feel like I've more so been nihilistic about politics, which is crazy because I feel like I used to always
Slight distinction there.
say nihilism was like intellectual laziness and just feeling like everything sucks is just an excuse to not talk about fixing things, but I relate to it now.
It's funny because that actually kind of has a point of like some nihilism is just bourgeois nihilism, and it just like reifies the status quo by doing nothing about it. And like the problem with like the anarcho-nihilists is like the fact that they don't have a political program or an ideology like to lead them to a vision of making the world better. But that's besides the point. She's more wrong now than she used to be is what we can get out of this.
Especially, I felt like everything political just sucks and I can't add to it, but this is something I can add to. So let's talk about Trump and the trans community. Disclaimer, this is a video that you're probably
That was like nauseating effects.
not going to grasp my full opinion unless you watch the entire thing. This is one of those videos that I also want to do kind of chronological. Like I want to start at the beginning of the Trump presidency until now and discuss everything. So before we do this very deep dive, I am so excited to announce that this video is sponsored by Surfshark. Surfshark.
Okay, dude. I don't care about your sponsorships, Blaire. I don't want to watch you make money.
Description, so check them out.
No.
Okay, so Trump and the trans community. I really want to get into how Trump, I would imagine, and I speculate how he actually feels about transgender people. I'll get into that. But first, we're going to get into what has been really frustrating for me the entire presidency, which has been, I feel like transgenderism by both sides has been used as a political football whenever it's convenient. And you know, I stand by what I have always said, which is that transgenderism is not to be politicized. It is to be medicalized. It is to be treated as a medical issue, not a
What? She literally just admits, I am a trans medicalist. Even though I kind of get her point of like, yeah, sure, you don't want to, like, trans people being a political debate, while it is a sign of progress, like, at least they're debating about us, it's like, we have to win that debate. The problem is, I don't think her way of doing, her narratives of, like, I'm just a trans medicalist, and I basically just think that dysphoria and being trans are the same thing, which they're obviously not, which we've already made a debunking Blaire White video about that. So you can go there for that point, but like that's not helping us win that debate because that just capitulates to cis heteronormativity and transphobia as an institution.
political talking point. So you can imagine the past 4 years have been a little bit frustrating for me. What I've noticed since 2016 is that every 6 months or so, there's some new, very scary sounding, very shocking trans headline, and it is always something to the effect of all of our rights are being stripped.
Let's take a look at this. Controversial Trump administration ban on transgender troops goes into effect. Okay, that happened. Trump administration erases transgender civil rights protections in healthcare. They tried to do this. HRC responds to the Trump administration's decision to attack transgender. Okay, yeah. Could be defined out of existence under Trump. Yep, they also tried to do that.
Our lives
This is all true.
are in danger, and the trans community, like I said, every 6 months because of these stories just goes into complete hysteria and panic mode. And it actually started with the election itself. On the day of the election, there was a story ran that after he won, it was either 8 or 10 transgender children committed suicide. Huge trans influencers like Gigi Gorgeous and
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if, like, it must be the case that at least one trans person kills themselves every day. Like,
really every single other one made videos about it, ran with it like it was true. 8
unfortunately, our suicide problem is pretty big.
transgender kids had committed suicide. I was, like, my stomach, I just got goosebumps. Like, my stomach turned.
And it was actually scary even for me. The trans community was rightfully horrified because obviously if that were true, that's an insane, horrible tragedy. The problem is that it was 1,000% false. It was
Wait, really?
so false that GLAAD had to come out a few days later and say that we shouldn't be spreading that because it's completely unverified and completely untrue. In fact, it was one verified Twitter user that said it and said they had a private source confirming it, and suddenly it was being reported as fact. So to me, that was the beginning of the politicization of trans issues in the last 4 years. Was that?
I mean, transgenderism has always been a political issue. It's just now that, like, the conversation is heightening because acceptance is being fought for in more of, like, a open way. Because, like, now is the time of this being a contentious thing. Also because of the fact that the right-wingers in power right now are using us as their scapegoat. We're one of their go-to scary bad guy villains. The trans people are out to get you. The trans people are out to molest your children. The trans people will rape you in a bathroom. Instead of talking about, like, oh, capitalism is fucking you over. Maybe you should be mad at the system. They talk about, oh, you should be mad at these people who aren't like you. And what you should be afraid of. You should run to the way that things are now to protect you from the way that we could make them, which will be better for all of us.
Right there in the beginning. So let's jump forward to 2017, the Trump military ban, trans military ban. So this was the beginning of actual policy decisions being made by the administration about
Is she gonna say this didn't happen?
trans people. I understand the argument in which it is not ideal for trans people to serve in certain capacities, the front lines, very specific example. I think the
How do you understand that? Nothing about being trans makes you less capable of fighting a war, hypothetically. That's literally bullshit. Like, why would you even think that? Like, seriously? Like, why? What is your argument?
reliance on trans-specific medication, hormones, obviously, and the fact that often they are placed in countries where they're very vulnerable because they are trans. Like, think about, I don't know, like me fighting in Iran. Like, what? Like, obviously,
Well, you're not a fucking soldier, Blaire.
in countries where it's illegal or dangerous, that can compromise the effectiveness of certain operations by having a trans person in the mix.
How? Tell me how. Like, give me an actual, like, argument for how. Because you're not. You just say, oh, they take hormones. And they're in countries where people are transphobic. People in America are transphobic. What? She doesn't have an argument. She actually doesn't have an argument here.
I did feel, however, that banning them under any and every capacity, we're talking cooks, we're talking...
Why does she even think that? Like, why would you even think that? Like, give me an actual, like, argument for how. Because you're not. You just say, oh, they take hormones. And they're in countries where people are transphobic. People in America are transphobic. What? She doesn't have an argument. She actually doesn't have an argument here. I did feel, however, that banning them under any and every capacity, we're talking cooks, we're talking
being medics and doctors and, you know, coders. Like, there are a lot of positions in the military that are not directly on the front lines fighting. In fact, the overwhelming majority of them are not. And
okay, but why would you think that a trans person couldn't fight on the front lines of a war? You have to be transphobic to have that perspective. I'm sorry. Like that's an indicative statement of your underlying attitudes. And that's what that is. Like, I'm not afraid of calling this out, honestly.
Can't think of a reason why a trans person couldn't be like a cook, or if they're a talented
Okay, but I can't think of why they couldn't be a soldier.
nurse. You know, having said all that, there is something to be said for the fact that the military denies people joining for a lot of reasons, and a lot of those reasons may even seem silly. Like, if you have even the slightest bit of anxiety, you cannot be in the military. If you have not great eyesight, you cannot be in the military. If you have gauges in your ears, tattoos in certain places, if you are overweight, depression, OCD, none of those things you can join the military with. They will deny you. And so to me, thinking, you know, I understand how crippling gender dysphoria is.
So wait. Hold on, I'm going to let her finish.
Actually do understand the argument that that would be something that would hurt the effectiveness of people in the military. So
Okay, so because all this other shit is fucking banned, and you can't, like, because they banned all these other traits about people, it's okay that they banned us. I can understand it. It's like, what? Okay, so extrapolate that further. What if they banned black people from the military? What if they did that? Would you then justify that by saying, oh, they banned all this other they have all these other requirements, therefore this is fine? Like, what the fuck? It's so bad. What's her point? There is no point.
you know, I feel like if someone were to pay me to debate
Her point is trans people bad and Trump good.
both sides, like, Blaire, here's, I don't know, $500, like, debate why trans people should be allowed in the military indefinitely. I could do that. If someone was like, Blaire, here's $500.
Wait, then why aren't you making that video? Why do you have to be paid to make a good point that actually, like, helps everyone in the community instead of just yourself? Honestly. Why would you need money to do that? Why don't you just make a video making that case? Use your platform to make that case. Because you're founded on an audience of conservatives. I think that's literally the reason.
Debate why they should never be in. I could probably do that too. It's very much a gray area of a topic. But honestly, I felt like it was way too sweeping, like I said. So let's jump to early 2018. The next big trans headline was that Trump was forcing the CDC to ban the word transgender from any and all documents. There are other words.
Which is just fucking, like, that's transphobia fucking to a T right there. I'm going to ban it from every document that exists. I'm going to ban the word. It's like you're literally afraid of us. They're literally scared of us. Like,
allegedly being banned, but this is obviously about the trans stuff. This was completely fake. Like 110% fake. This did not happen.
Okay, there's no ban on words. Okay.
Has come out and said this did not happen, but yet it was a viral story that every trans influencer and every person that the trans community looks to as one of our defenders ran with. And the problem with running with fake stories is that the fake story will get a lot of attention up front, but the correction will get maybe 1/10 of the attention. So I think there are probably a lot of people, maybe even some of you guys, let me know in the comments.
This happens for a lot of left-leaning shit as well, guys. Like,
who still think that the word transgender is banned from the CDC documents. No, it just never happened. Ask CNN, ask anyone. Like, it didn't happen. Next up, jump to fall 2018, and this time.
but I feel like that's like when she drips this in, I feel like it's a fucking distraction issue. Like, she's just like, oh, see, there's this example, it's made up. But then it's like they did this egregious thing. It's okay. Like, let me justify that when I also admit that I could debate against it if I wanted to. Or if I was paid to. If it were my job to do that, I would be doing that. But instead, it's her job to capitulate to conservative transphobic people in her audience. My God.
The big trans everyone be scared headline was that trans people would no longer exist under law. This one came right before midterms because I think if you really pay attention, you'll notice that the most salacious, fear-mongering stories, especially as it relates to certain minority groups, will always come around elections. We have Steph Signotti doing a video that got hundreds of thousands of views saying trans people will no longer exist, and the gist of it was that trans people would no longer be able to change their gender legally as it pertains to certain documents like birth certificates.
Which is legal erasure. That's utter legal erasure of transgenderism. Literally. That's what that means.
Driver's license, social security, all those are things that I changed before 2018, but I know an immense amount of people.
They're literally trying to stop you from changing your gender legally in the legal world. In the legal, which is the realm that they care about when it comes to citizens, because the state fucking hates you, okay?
In all states who have changed it since then. This literally just never happened. It just wasn't a thing. I can get into the nitty gritty, but all you need to know is it didn't happen. But the entirety of the trans community was believing that it did. And all of our influencers were saying that it was true.
They were trying to do that. The Trump administration was trying to do that. They weren't allowed to, which is like part of the checks and balances of the fucking system that we live under. That's not allowing it to literally become a fucking send all of the trans communists to a gulag, or to a fucking gas chamber rather.
True. Very sad. And the problem is that every
They were trying to do it.
single time that one of these stories comes out saying that it's the end of trans people, right? Like, I'll know it comes out because my DM is just flooded
I'll be streaming for a while.
with young trans people scared and asking me for help and guidance and saying, like, can you please help? Like, it really does set the community into an emotional uproar. It does. So let's jump to something recent. Last month, Pride Month, you might have seen that it came out and the new headline was that Trump was removing all healthcare for all trans people. That was the big...
They were also trying to do that as well. She's portraying this as like, oh, the media is lying about Trump, but it's like, the administration was trying to do this. The Supreme Court stopped them.
thing, right? So this hit during Pride Month. And not just any Pride Month. It hit during, obviously, June, and even now, July, about to be August. It's a very emotionally heightened time as it pertains to social issues, everything happening in the world, obviously. Like, this type of headline is going to really set people off. The problem is that, again, this didn't happen. I debunked it in an article.
They were trying to do it.
You can go read that and get every single detail. But the long and short of it is that these protections that were supposedly being repealed that protected trans people were never actually set in place. They were actually proposed and then struck down before Trump ever took office. Like, this isn't even a defense of Trump.
Yeah, but what the fuck? What is she even talking about there? There's the recent Supreme Court case where they tried to remove the protections.
This isn't even a defense of anything. This is just literally the media emotionally manipulating trans people and people who care about trans people into thinking something is happening when it's really not. These protections were struck down in court before he was president. How can he repeal something that never was put in place?
What the fuck is she talking about here? Like, I legitimately want to know. What? Trump administration or Supreme Court rules Trump administration, rules against Trump administration, transgender housing medical discrimination. June 15th, 2020. The Supreme Court ruled that a civil rights law protects gay and transgender employees from workplace discrimination. That's what they're trying to do. Healthcare. As recent as then. Dude, this is real. This is true. Oh, they're lying. I hate the New York Times, but... Right. They're literally just trying to erase us. And Blaire White obviously is like, it's not happening. Ah. Considering a policy to allow homeless shelters to consider biological sex rather than gender identity placement decisions. And when transgender women do face abuse when placed with men, obviously. On Friday, it erased requirements that doctors offer and insurers cover medically appropriate treatment for transgender patients. A 1972 education law barring sex discrimination is what the Supreme Court used to strike this down. Blaire, what the fuck is she talking about? Blaire White is literally just lying.
It doesn't make sense, but it was
It doesn't make sense.
perfect of a storm to come out during Pride Month, one of the craziest Pride months ever, obviously, 2020. And people were just not, and they might still not, be prepared to hear or ready to accept that that wasn't the whole truth. Or really, that wasn't the truth at all. Healthcare, as it pertains to trans people, is exactly the same as it was last year, the year before that, the year before that. But once again, the emotions of the trans community and the people who care about us and the clicks that we provide is just way too great for the media to pass up. Doesn't really matter if it's not true. They're still going to run with it. And it sucks. So let's get into how Trump feels about trans people. Now, I can...
Ugh, this part doesn't even really fucking matter, even though you can tell that he hates us.
Anyone can only speculate. Like, no one knows how someone really feels, right? My gut and everything I've seen over the past 4 years, which, keep in mind, I am very plugged into trans issues. Obviously, it's my career, it's my life. Like, I've watched every news...
It's your career to capitulate to cis people who hate us, though.
...coming out about trans people since he took office. My gut is that he probably doesn't really know what transgenderism is, at least not to the extent for which...
Doesn't that make him transphobic in, like, the broadest sense of the word?
...it exists in 2020, like what people think of it now. What likely is the case is that transgenderism is such a culture war, hot button issue that I feel that the instance of like the trans military ban, I feel like he could have won his whole presidency without doing that and none of his base would have complained. But it was red meat to the segment of his base that maybe does feel a certain way about trans people. And so I feel that he did that partly, at least, because it gave his base something that they can say, oh, good job on. I don't think he had to do that. I feel like it was unnecessary, 110%. Like, call me pessimistic, but I really don't feel that those in the
Okay, so at least she thinks he shouldn't have done that.
media and in politics have like a true, like, genuine care, and that includes Trump, like a genuine care about the trans issue. I think for most people, whether it be Trump, whether it be the media, whether it be all the talking heads and figureheads that are coming up in your mind right now, I think it's just one of those things that is simply another issue to battle on and virtue signal about for both sides. I think that Trump has a base that wants to be fed certain lines about the transgender topic, and he will occasionally feed them that, and I think that that's really the extent of how he feels. I find that some people on the right have a misconception that transgenderism is an invention of the political left or a consequence of gender studies rather than a phenomenon that has been around for a very long time, if not forever, and likely isn't going anywhere anytime soon, and it is real people. I think, like, in the minds of people who have never met a trans person, like, all they know is what they hear from the media and on social media. It's just like something invented by the left. It's just like a political thing.
Yeah, I bet they do. I hate that too. Holy shit.
So I do feel that's probably how Trump feels. I do. I mean, there really exists no interviews where Trump explicitly...
She's not mad enough about that if that's what she actually thinks he thinks.
...discusses transgender people. So I don't really know how he feels, and I feel like
because that's still disgusting. Like, if she thinks that he would just throw a bunch of people fucking out of their jobs. Like, the military was the biggest employer of trans people in the United States, and you just did that. But she's, like, not vote. Like, she literally didn't argue against it earlier in the fucking video. She literally argued for it.
Kind of wants me to know how he feels
Without making an argument. It's literally... That's the biggest... Like, that just illuminates to you the biggest problems with Blaire White as a whole.
Talk about it, and I don't know. The military ban thing was shitty in a lot of ways. I understand it in other ways. But other than that, a lot of these headlines that come out turn out to not even be real. So I don't really know how to feel half the time. The other thing that I think is important...
Why are you misrepresenting them, though? Like... That might be... She might consciously be doing that as well.
I mention is that
Blaire White is a grifter.
I care about trans issues, and if you're watching this as a supporter of mine, you probably care at least a little bit, unless you're, subscribed to me for another reason. But I think sometimes when you care and you're invested deeply into an issue, you your judgment is clouded as to the extent for which the entire world cares. And I also feel like trans issues, in the grand scheme of the world, are not like the most important thing. Like, they're important to me.
Oh my god, dude, you're literally trans.
Don't get me wrong. And
like a no-id poll, but unironically, I hate when people of minority communities talk about their minority communities like this. It's just disgusting to me.
They should be more important to more people, but I don't know. I will say, if anyone's watching who can hook it up, I would love to interview the president, talk to the president on camera, possibly.
That'd be fucking hilarious. And annoying and enraging. Likely.
Pick his brain a little bit. Maybe provide some healing for the trans community and bridge a divide. I do feel like that's my purpose in general with everything that I do, so maybe that'll happen. Let's all will that to happen.
The fuck?
It's gonna happen. So with that being said, that is my long form and nuanced opinion on Trump as he relates to the trans community and the trans community as they relate to Trump. Make sure you guys subscribe to this YouTube channel if you're not. I know you're
bad.
4 or 5 more videos. I know you've already probably peeped 4 or 5.
Bad. Don't sub. Bad.
Just join the family. I don't have any friends.
Don't subscribe.
So I kind of need subscribers.
Don't subscribe to her.
Make sure you guys follow me on Twitter and Instagram because I post on there.
I covered that
more than I
video.
do on YouTube, and you gotta keep up with those to keep up with me. And I love you guys, and I'll see you in the next video.
Fucking
bye, guys.
Bullshit artist. Holy shit.